actually, I don't even have a Snapchat account, so I don't really know like what people do over there. But people come here to snap, and
Hi friends, welcome to the Metacast by Naavik. Today I'm joined by Abhimanyu Kumar, you know him, he's the co-founder of Naavik. Tammy Levy, Chief Games Officer at Captain TV. And Mannveille, CPO at Hutch. Hello.
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 It's great to be
Is that
here.
Is that the cool way to say it? Hutch. You sort of emphasize
Hutch.
the H.
Yeah,
Catch
definitely.
On. All right.
Today is a product party. We're all product people.
Hopefully we can deliver on the prog party, right? Right? Some
We need
numbers.
a jingle. What's the product party jingle?
because I see Mario at the back. So.
Okay, do not hire us to write jingles. It's fine. Before we carry on, some sad news, some happy news. So Nico, he is amazing, and he's going to move on to new adventures, influencing, building Web3 games and what that means. So he'll no longer be the Crypto Corner host on the Metacast by Naavik. And the happy news is that we're looking for a new host for that podcast. So if you're listening and you're thinking, oh, maybe should I not? Don't worry. I thought the exact same thing before sending Naavik an email and then suddenly becoming a host. Honestly, no worries. We were looking for someone who has a good grasp on crypto and gaming, but you don't need to really have experience in podcasting as long as you're excited to do it. And just send an email. Let's get to know you. When I sent the email, I thought, who am I? I'm nobody in the games industry. I'll never become a host. And then I did.
It all worked out.
So take a chance. Yeah, take a chance. Reach out to us.
Yep. Definitely happy to hear from anyone interested. So just reach out at metacast@naavik.co and I will reach back out to have a call with you.
Cool. All right.
And it's fun, right? It's fun. It's fun to host podcasts.
It is really fun. It's a great way to just gain knowledge every week. So I'm very, very happy to have taken the opportunity. And then I get to hang out with you, which is the best thing. One of the things I look for the most in my weeks. And to pick us up from some sad news of Nico going away, Manu, do you have a fun Naavik Gamescom party quick story you could share with us?
Maybe not about the party, though. The party was really, really great. So, big thanks to Phoenix Games for, funding the whole thing, and also DOF and Miska in particular for, even bringing up the whole idea. So I think it was a huge success. We probably had a little over 400 people walk in and walk out, and it was really good to just meet everyone after 3 years of no Gamescom, So that was a great meeting point. Gamescom itself, I was a little bit underwhelmed with, the consumer section of it. A lot of the big companies weren't really there and didn't kind of get to see usually in one hall, there's always EA with its huge stands in red, and on the opposite side of the hall there's always Activision Blizzard with its huge stands in blue, and you kind of stand in the center, and it always feels like this light company war kind of a thing between them and their games. But yeah, that was it. There wasn't too much of that this year. Also, blockchain gaming footprint, at least in the main halls and the main conference area, was really, really minimal. I think most of the blockchain gaming conversations were happening in the neighboring hotels and not in the main area. But yeah, interesting story, I guess. Maybe one thing I had learned about Aaron, because I also got to meet Aaron and Thomas, for the first time ever in 3.5 years of building Naavik. But an interesting story about Aaron is I got to know he is he is very, very fascinated by ice cubes, or I, uh, I don't even know if it's like cubes or like ice spheres. And he loves to like look at the I don't even know how to say it, but like the water concentration in ice spheres, and if it's like, equally spread out across the whole sphere or not. So we were like on the first night when he reached, we were sitting at this bar and having a drink, and just kind of catching up. And in the glass, we ordered like these old fashions, and in that glass there was a big ice sphere in it. And after he finished his drink, he told me about this like obsession he has with ice spheres, and he basically pulled out the whole sphere in his hand, like with like water and drink kind of like spilling from his hand, and he was just observing it. And yeah, that was something new I learned about Aaron. That's the kind of stuff you don't really get to learn about people over video, so it was pretty good to like meet him in person, and get to see his quirks a little bit. But yeah,
That is a fascinating hobby. I'm gonna call it a hobby.
next time he's on,
ephemeral.
like,
It comes and goes.
yeah. Next time he's on, I think you should like definitely ask him more about it. I forgot why he has that fascination, but he does. So
This is so random. I don't know what else to say about it. I think we'll carry on, and then I'll try to investigate. I'll do some Googling into ice facts
all right.
for the next time that he's on.
Cool.
Thanks for sharing. That's good. Now everyone knows about Aaron's fascination of ice.
Yeah.
So before we're jumping into the topics, this is a kind of a topic, but not really a topic. It's more of a summary, because yesterday Tencent announced that it increased its stake in Ubisoft, and I thought we should at least gloss over it. So it's going to increase its minority stake, and it's valuing Ubisoft at nearly $10 billion US. And it's also following NetEase's acquisition of Quantic Dream. Quantic Dream developed Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human. And Tencent also recently increased its stake in From Software. So the transaction, this was really interesting to break down. The transaction gives Tencent a total stake of 11% through the acquisition of a stake in the family's holding. So they have a direct stake with Ubisoft, and now they're acquiring a stake in the family's holding stake. They acquired 49.9%, and that gives them a 5% voting rights in the Gilmour Brothers Limited. I'm trying my French here. And Tencent also has the rights to raise its direct stake in Ubisoft to 9.99% from the current 4.5%, and cannot go above the 9.99 for a period of 8 years. So I think there was a lot of discussion where there were some rumors about whether Ubisoft was looking for someone to acquire them or not. There were some doubts about that. And I think this seems like a good intermediate solution. It's not a full acquisition. They got an investment, I think it's around 300 million. Do you have any very quick takes before we move on?
Yeah, at least from my side, like I've actually not spent as much time as I should probably looking into this, but I also know that when Ubisoft kind of put out the idea of they want to like explore these strategic alternatives and like potential acquisition and such, they also had very, very high expectations for it, with a pretty like solid premium on their current stock price and such. And I guess the one thing we'll probably like cover it in the newsletter this Sunday or next Wednesday, and maybe even the podcast. But yeah, the key question for me is like, did Ubisoft kind of get what it wanted through this? But the whole like stake in the family holding company, that's like a big question mark. Like I don't get that. Like why they would structure it like that. But yeah, I also haven't like really looked into it. But that part felt weird a little bit.
Yeah, I honestly don't know enough about all of these state stocks and how it works. I'm really curious to read more content about someone breaking down the whys behind all of these decisions. Perhaps in the Naavik newsletter.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
It's also very interesting because I think Tencent, just in trying to expand their footprint, they come up with like all sorts of interesting deals and setups, and splitting things in different ways and having different gates. So it's very interesting how they just continue to do that, and slowly but surely, like you read up and you're like, oh, Tencent has a hand in that, or Tencent has a finger in that, and it's just like they're pretty much everywhere.
Yep.
At the end of the day, the difficulty of the Chinese market and the issues with getting their games approved to release there, in the end, it might actually turn out to be one of the best constraints that the company had to find a way to work around, and potentially it'll lead to very successful long-term results. We'll have to see. All right, we're going to jump into the topics. I sounded very Canadian there with my all right. So we're going to be looking into social networks downsizing their gaming initiatives. So we'll be looking at a few companies. We're also exploring the creativity within IAPs. So mobile product managers, get excited about this. And finally, we'll dive into Xbox's Friends and Family Game Pass and what that means to the players and what that means for their strategy. Tammy, you're first on the block.
So it was an interesting week, the last week, with different moves and changes from various social networks in terms of changing their focus and prioritization around their gaming initiatives. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there were 3 announcements from TikTok announcing that they were downsizing their gaming initiatives, to Facebook or Meta announcing that they were going to shut down an app that a lot of people might not be familiar with called Facebook Gaming, to an even bigger restructuring and reduced investment from Snapchat. And as I was reading, a lot of these different announcements and just changes, the thing that comes to mind is like games. Yes, games are hard, and a lot of these companies in social networks, they see the value in going into games, expanding into games, but after a couple of years, it just gets really hard for them to justify that investment, and this is what we're seeing now. Some numbers before we kind of talk a little bit more about our takes on this, but the one that I'll go into more detail is the Snapchat one, which happened last week. They announced kind of their whole restructure. It impacted more than just Snap Games. They sadly laid off 20% of their workforce, which is over 1,000 employees, which is huge. It's always pretty hard to read those numbers, just seeing how it's impacting gaming and the broader tech. And they announced that they're going to be focusing on their community growth, revenue growth, and augmented reality initiatives. So a lot of basically everything that they had tried to expand into was impacted from Snap Games and what they were calling mini apps. They've been very clear that they are moving all of that to maintenance mode. They had acquired a couple of independent apps, one of them called Zenly. They're downsizing all those apps as well. They had if you didn't know, they had a drone
gaming
camera.
Apps? Were those gaming apps? The Zenly?
No, there were social apps. One was like a social mapping app. The other one, I forget what it was. They did have a couple of gaming apps. And they're doing is moving them to maintenance mode, basically. Okay. Yeah, they had a hardware initiative with like a drone camera called Pixie. They canceled that. Yeah. They had
that's canceled.
Snap shows. That's canceled.
That's crazy. And what about the Snap classes? Are those also canceled?
So that was interesting, because that says that they're in their announcement that they're just narrowing their focus so the spectacles that they call it. They did not call that out as canceled, just narrowed their scope. And I think that part of it is that it falls under their AR initiatives. And what they were developing was like pretty interesting. I don't know if you guys have seen the demos of AR with like various spectacles. It was pretty impressive. So we'll see what they end up doing there. Side note, I just think it's super hard, especially with like the spectacles and the drone camera piece. It's so hard to be a hardware company if you're not a hardware company, and I think that that's part of what some of these initiatives really show, and like kind of this change of focus, right? Like if you're a software company and try to go into hardware, it's not the same skills. It's not the same expertise.
And also like takes your focus off of the software part of it, especially with like the big TikTok elephant, massively like, gaining market share. But yeah.
I realized how behind I was on knowing what Snap did when I was researching for this topic, because I thought Snap was Snapchat, and then I started going through it. I can't really find this thread of focus in their strategy. So it's very sad that they had to lay off a lot of people. I do understand after researching why they made this decision, especially considering just the basics of your revenue, your costs, and whether you get profit or not.
Yeah. And like they also had like Web3 initiatives. I think that's also in the shutdown. So it's like just like a laundry list of things that they were trying, right? Specific to games, though, one thing that I find very interesting is that they were trying a very similar strategy to what Facebook tried with the instant games, and Facebook shut that down in 2019. So it's almost the market has changed. They approached it differently, but it's almost history repeating itself.
And we'll see if history repeats itself again with the TikTok games.
Exactly. That was gonna be my next point.
No,
right?
Sorry.
No, it's great. It's great, right? It's like TikTok is. I think that they're even though they called out that they're kind of reducing their gaming focus, I think the place where they're still going to be investing is in their mini games, in their instant games, or whatever they'll call it, bite-sized games. So we'll see if TikTok figures it out, but it's just very interesting to see that social networks see this value. They want to see gaming come to life, and they just haven't been able to find the right approach, the right design. One of the pieces is their monetization, right? Like for these games to work, at least they've tried to do ad monetization, and with all the ad network woos and Apple ad tracking, it just feels like Snapchat is another victim of that in that regard specifically. They try in-app purchases, but goes back to like the 30% cut. How do they approach this? These are not deep games that monetize super, super deep. And that's really, they could try subscriptions, which Netflix is kind of going down that path of like, hey, we offer games within our subscriptions. So it'll be interesting to see where all of these initiatives net out. It's sad to see that Snapchat, that already had a ton of games, like over 30 games. They had partnered with some huge names, Zynga, Zeptolabs, Pickpock. Voodoo was one of the huge ones that they worked with. They had really good engagement, like 40% of their users, and they still couldn't quite justify it. So the question I wanted to just open it up to all of you guys is, do you see a model that could work out for social networks bringing games kind of more deeply integrated into their experience? Or is that just kind of a pursuit that is not going to pan out?
Well, the thing that I hark back to is whenever you're looking at some kind of new or risky endeavor, you look for examples of success in the past, right? If there's been no examples of success, then like, okay, wow, be careful about this. But in this case, there's a clear one, right? Facebook in the pre sort of mobile games era was it. Facebook and games was absolutely colossal. So there is this one example of that working. But then I don't think there are any others. So, and when there's only one, you have to be almost as careful as when there's none, because like maybe there was some very special circumstances around the
There's
time and the
WeChat.
place.
I was gonna say there's WeChat.
Right.
I think like it's like WeChat, but it's a completely different market, right?
Yeah,
It's a completely different time and place. Yeah.
Yeah, in that market, it's actually like it's working to some extent, but I think that also kind of like that just calls out the difference in just audience preferences from between the East and the West. But yeah, I mean, sorry to cut you off, Tim, but I just wanted to say, yeah, there's also like WeChat that is like a
but there's a
one
sort
example that
of
works.
special kind of monopoly arrangement going on there in a few ways, right? Which maybe doesn't
that
play
whole
out the same
super
way in
app
the West.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the difference is Facebook is a social app, and I think WeChat is almost a life management app. You can do everything related to your life within the app nearly. Call a taxi, manage your bank, book a movie ticket. And so is it games that are working in WeChat, or is it just such a big behemoth where you do already everything almost as if it's your smartphone?
Yeah, I think exactly. Part of it is where are you at in your head? Like I am on my phone and I'm like, I'm going to go to a social app or I'm going to go to a game. If I'm on WeChat, it's like I am in WeChat rather than being on my phone. I could go to or a game.
Yeah, it's your operating system, right? It's like WeChat is the operating system.
Yeah. I actually think like Snap's the whole like minis initiative was pretty much like parallel to what WeChat was trying to do with the whole super app, because with all these mini apps, I mean, games was only like one part of it, but you could also, book tickets and like RSVP to events with your friends. And basically like all these social group activities were all these mini applications from, Eventbrite or Coachella and, all these different companies. So I actually think, I mean, yeah, again, like I haven't like really looked deeply into it, but the whole mini strategy that they were trying, I felt was trying to like bring super apps to the West. And that's why I say like it just kind of shows the audience preferences, and they really don't want it. And like for the game specifically, the more that Tammy was explaining like how these game experiences are, it just felt like the big question for like at least for me, or probably even like some more of the audience, would be like, if I'm basically going to get a game experience that is closer and closer to another game's experience that is basically its own app, which is it's a game with ads and IAPs and whatnot, why would I play it on Snapchat and not just like open another app? And I also have my friends over there, and it's just a more high fidelity experience like that. So I felt like there was just like this fundamental problem with how they were approaching games, I felt, on Snap. But I think the way TikTok is doing it is maybe a little bit different. So TikTok is not really like, at least what I've seen on the app until now, they're not creating like these full-fledged game experiences, right? It's more these like very, very mini, small mini games that is native to the video platform. So you have to like you'll have to like move your head on video to make the Flappy Bird character move through the obstacles, and that works. And then people make videos of them looking funny doing that, and then it kind of drives the engagement algorithm and basically the core purpose of the app more, versus Snapchat, which was okay, well, you have all your friends over here, so I guess you also want to play games with them, so here's like a full-fledged game experience in like a button in the corner, and that'll work. But maybe on paper that makes sense, but it didn't really like play out.
There's this metaphor used a few times that Hutch would talk about. Imagine combining this great thing with this other great thing. So you're like, okay, we've got a cool social network, gaming is huge, well, let's have some of that. But you've got to be careful that you're not just saying, we've got a cool car, let's make it as fast as an F1 car and with the capacity of a cruise ship. Wouldn't that be just amazing? And you're like, you're actually trying to drive together two things that don't really work. And then that's why, like you say, TikTok's approach, okay, it makes more sense. You're actually going with the grain of the thing that you have. Games actually can take any form. A game can take 10 seconds, a game can take 1,000 hours. Well, okay, choose the space that makes sense for what you have, and then, okay, maybe you have something. I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's too speculative, but you can sort of lean into games that are already, like, people play sort of games, folk games in a way, within social networks. It's like, oh, here's a funny question. What's your answer to this question? Okay, or like, here's a funny image, add your thing to it and pass it on. These are close to games already. Can you dive deeper on that? I can't imagine what it is. It's easy to say.
Yeah. No, I think that part of the piece for me that is super conflicting with when thinking about games, bringing games to these other platforms and mediums is the user motivation and the user patterns, which are like entirely different from your traditional game. So to build a game that really resonates with the use patterns and engagement patterns that these networks or platforms already have, you have to think outside the box, design a new paradigm or adapt a paradigm to that way of interacting. At the same time, a lot of those times it kills what would be a lot of what you know to be as your monetization levers. So I think like that's really where potentially as an industry we're getting stuck, is we want to monetize in the way that we know, but it's not going to work for these certain types of experiences. So you have a conflict of interest of, do I drive this engaging bite size, to use the term that TikTok has been using for their games? Do I provide this bite size game experience to enhance the experience of the platform, of the network, or do I focus on what I know works to monetize free gaming experiences? And you end up adding all of these layers that will potentially kill the flow, kill the engagement. So I think like there's something that we just as an industry we haven't embraced or figure out how to break kind of those two barriers and have them work together. If I think that a lot of these games would be hugely successful if you were just let's drive just engagement on games help keep players around in the apps, and let's forget about monetization.
Right.
Like that would be a very different approach.
Out of social networks, right? There's Netflix, right? Where actually maybe it could make more sense because you want there's content and people engage with the content and that keeps them renewing. So there's a sense in which you don't have to do something radically different. I feel like they haven't really put their foot on the gas with it. Like there's a bunch of games there, but they're clearly not trying, right? Like that, if you just watch Netflix on the TV, you don't even know it exists. So I feel like there's a later stage to come where they try this properly, but I can sort of imagine it more.
And even finding the games on the Netflix app is difficult. It doesn't even have a section to tap. You just have to scroll through the main page enough until you find it. I think you're nailing it on the head there with the TikTok example and why it probably didn't work with Snap. I think there's a very big difference between, we have a social app, let's integrate games with it so that people can continue talking to each other, but doing something else. And then looking at what TikTok is doing, which is, we know how to monetize TikTok. We know how to make money from it. How can we develop games that further spin the wheel that already exists and keep it spinning with content that is specific for what already works?
Yeah, I mean, like TikTok, I guess, realized, okay, people are coming to this app to, create these short videos. They enjoy those short videos. And if we want to, how do we, allow them or, create more opportunities for them to basically create more videos? Because that's going to, spin their business flywheel. And, they build games or game experiences kind of keeping that in mind. And it works great. And, it's making that flywheel work. But Snap is, okay, people come here to I don't know. I don't even have a Snapchat account, so I don't really know like what people do over there. But people come here to snap, and uh, okay, great. Well, we want to keep them snapping longer, so let's put a little button with a game that basically looks like another mobile game, and maybe
Yeah.
they snap longer. But that clearly doesn't work.
Exactly.
I just like played
Because
the other mobile game.
the core of Snapchat is you create something and then it goes away, so it's ephemeris. But I didn't really see them embracing that with their game design. We do need to carry on into the next topic. I just want to highlight that I know we're speaking with positivity about TikTok's gaming strategy. They did downsize quite recently, but from my research, it was not from these initiatives. It was from developing their own games.
Yeah, kind of the side initiatives. So we'll see where they ended out. I'm very curious. I'm very curious and skeptical about both TikTok and Netflix, but those are two other deep dives we'll have to do in the future.
Tim, tell us, what do you know about IAPs? What's exciting?
All right. Well, so first of all, right, just generally, I'm tremendously excited by games. Just of all kinds. The fact that a game can just be anything, like it is just tremendously exciting to me generally. In fact, I'm just reminded of it's like practical games. There was a lovely viral video playing a game where they're like on the edge of a cliff or something, and you take it in turns to throw your shoe as close as you can to the edge of the cliff.
Oh.
And so there's a risk reward there, right? If you go real too far, then okay, you're going to have to go down and get your shoe later. That's a game you can play. All right, that's great. And then there's IAPs. You're like, oh, okay, IAPs. Okay, well, this is where we make the money. It's like, no, the possibilities are still vast. The full range of things you can do and conceive of is still present. It's amazing what you can do, and we've kind of barely scratched the surface. There's limitations, right? For sure, right? Like, okay, there's a 30% cut going on Apple and Google, so that makes some things less good. Like, there's a particularly cool thing that was used, I think, at a theme park for those, where they take photos of you on the ride and they try to sell you afterwards. And it's always a weird, like, okay, I'll do it. How much is it? What? That's ridiculous. And there was a lot of success with the model where it was like, pay what you want, and 50% of it goes to charity. And that was the most successful way to set it up. Pay what you want, but 50% goes to charity. So that's cool. And the Humble Bundle then kind of took that and ran with it. But if somebody's taking a 30% cut, okay, those kind of cool gambits start to look less good. And then there's the practicalities. How do you handle refunds? Is it a thing that you can claim back if you go on another device? And okay, there's some problems, but there's still loads of amazing stuff that you can do. And so what this was just jumping off an article that Maria shared, right, from Game Refinery about some cool examples of some IAP offers. And there were some nice things there that I hadn't heard of, and some other ones. So some smaller things, some bigger things. It also ties to why recently I stopped playing Pokemon Go. I talked to some other people who had, and they have this beautiful thing, right, where they have this Pokemon Go Fest. There's an IAP. It's like $11 to participate in this virtual online thing. But once you've got it, you can buy somebody else that IAP for like half the price, for $5. Because it's a social game, I guess, and you want to play it as a family, and you don't want to go, oh my goodness, it's going to cost me $50 to get my family to play this thing. Okay, there's a discount. But it also means you have a sort of viral IAP. It's like, because the person who gets the cheap one, but they've now got it, so I think they can then buy somebody else the one for $5. So there's a whole thing where, okay, now you've got a social thing. You're talking to each other to try and work out how to get it cheaper, and it's a hefty discount. So it's worth doing it. I thought that was really clever. But there's simpler things. So the Merge Fables example was actually kind of simple, but kind of effective. It's just like you're going to do this series of quests and you're going to win these prizes. And they just have a screen where it puts on the one half, like, here's the prizes you're going to get for the quest. And over the other half, it's like, oh, and there's an IAP for all of these things, by the way. And you kind of look at them and you go, oh, right, I'm going to do all this stuff to get these. Or I could just pay $5 and get all of those things. And it's kind of nice because I like to talk about things that go with the grain of human nature. Like, if you're making an IAP bundle, the natural thing is to think, like, is this worth it to me? Like, how I could get that from here, I'm going to get this here. And it's just literally on the same screen. Kind of makes sense, really. You're going to do this quest for these things. Here's an IAP for these things. Simple, but I hadn't seen it before. I mean, there's a few others, but I don't know. I thought I should throw it out here if you guys had any particularly favorite IAPs or crazy purchasing experiences you've seen or even made.
I think one of my favorite IAP designs is from Mobile Legends Bang Bang. Not many games can get through my hard shell of I shall not monetize. And Mobile Legends got me because they gave me almost a quest system. They gave me rewards for buying. And it's sort of, I'll get this thing that I'm buying and I'll get a reward. And if I keep buying enough, I'll get a super amazing reward. And it was almost gamifying my consumer behavior.
Yeah, in a way, the season pass or battle pass thing is a kind of version of that, because it's like there's this whole game and you're going to unlock prizes as you go, and then if you pay, there's this cooler version of it. So it's like the game aspect is built in.
I think I think it was Nexon that actually either pioneered it or popularized that mechanic specifically in one of their games. I think they called it it was called some kind of like VIP payer mechanic or something like that. And basically it was what you said right now, like basically they're tracking your purchases, and the more purchases you make, the more rewards that you can get. And these rewards are like some pretty like crazy rewards that are not available to the the rest of the 97% of the population. But yeah, I think it was Nexon that actually pioneered or popularized that one.
You have the whole thing of free to play is you have some people who play for free, some people who spend a little bit, and some people who even spend a huge amount. There's a strange paradox where generally what you set it up as like the more you buy, the more you save. But at the same time, the people spending the most, they need those savings the least. The people at the lower level, they're the ones who really need the discount. And yet at the same time, the more you buy, you save. How do you square that? Frequently, right, it's with IAPs. So like there was a very clean version of it I saw in Dungeon Link back in the day, where there was just once a month, there was an extremely good offer for $5. Once every 2 weeks, there was a quite good offer for $10. And once every week, there was a not as good offer for $20. So that meant, and then there was standard. So that means if you were not spending very much, well, okay, you just get the thing that once a month. If you spend a little bit, you get the next one. And in this way, you actually get a discount that's bigger if you're spending less. I thought that was quite cute.
Interesting. I think the question I want to put to the group is, do small gaming companies have the luxury of innovating IAPs? Because there's known patterns, especially in free-to-play. And if you're a small team, you can see what already works in the industry. And you don't have a lot of creative time because you need to get going with what you're doing. And I think innovating IAPs, especially with something that is so ingrained and so already well known, it takes a lot of creative thought and just exploration time to find something that could work and then do an experimentation. So what do you think? Can and should small gaming companies try to innovate their IAPs?
I think so. It's a very interesting question, because I think that within free to play, we know that there's only a percentage that is ever going to play, right? So you are optimizing or maximizing, like if we're speaking of like traditional IPs and like traditional quote unquote, but just, IP purchase, free to play. We're still talking about like that, your ceiling is 6% ever of your players are ever going to play. If you're like super strong on your monetization, maybe 8% if you're like, some of the best in class outliers. So even though I think like small teams are the ones that can probably experiment the most in terms of just, if you're a small team, you can potentially like play around with it more, have more fun. Your players, like if you have a good relationship with your players, like they can be a little bit more flexible with you experimenting. At the same time, like what are you optimizing, right? Like what's the risk reward of you spending time on optimizing that small percentage? Ultimately, with anything monetization, it comes to sample size, right? When you're experimenting, and that's the problem that gets a lot of the small teams. I think like one thing is like team bandwidth and capacity, whether their audience is even like open to you experimenting. But at the end of the day, for you to like experiment in, even if you're just not doing an A/B test, even if you're just like launching something, for you to learn out of it, for you to get like some significant learning out of it, it comes down to your sample size. And if your user base is smaller, being a smaller team or a smaller game, that becomes hairier and hairier in terms of, are these gains significant or not, that we just like luck out on seeing like a little boost here. Also, it comes at a risk of, your economy, potentially like flooding your economy with a bunch of stuff that you then don't have like the sinks to like soak out of the economy. So I think it's IAP monetization. I'd love to see more experimentation and just creative thinking, but it also comes with a lot of risk. And it comes down to, what's the risk tolerance for a team? Like what are their goals? Not only like what is their bandwidth, but what are their goals as a team, as a company, and whether they can afford to take that risk in experimenting.
And building on those challenges of A/B tests, like very often when you do something that's far out there and there's a risk, you don't know how it works, and you almost certainly haven't hit upon the best version of it. So it'll be like, okay, we'll do that, and you're like, oh, that was a bit crazy in this way. We need to tweak it like this, and you find, the local maxima that makes sense for that idea. It's even harder, right? If you've got a small team, small population to run the experiments on, they'll have anchoring effects if they're that small because you've changed the value of this IAP and they remember what it was like before. Whereas if you have a constant stream of a large number of new players coming in, right, okay, we can do these tests and get a cleaner view. So that's really hard. And then the other one I was going to mention on this is that there are a lot of built-in cognitive strange biases around money and the way people think about it. And I think it's very easy to come up with something that in theory makes sense and then actually goes down really badly. Like one thing I was considering was, like, what do you mean an IAP? And it's like the extreme version of delayed gratification. Like you go, okay, you can buy now and you'll get 50% more gold, but you'll get it in a week's time. Maybe that's better. And maybe that's dissuading from people from making impulse purchases because maybe that's not a good thing. But then gamers could easily look at it the other way and go, look, you're giving less to the people who are buying it in the moment. You're exploiting their weakness by making them pay more. You could look at it that way, and maybe that's how most people would look at it. So you've got to be really, really careful, for sure. When I say things that go with the grain of human nature, actually that can be bad. Like in that case, you would say, no, we should do it the other way. We should do offers that last for 5 minutes and the best value. And because that's what people want to do. And people are like, is that really the best thing? I don't know.
Yeah, I also feel like, to your question about like, do small teams have the luxury to innovate? I also feel like a lot of innovation does come naturally from the small teams because, they're small and scrappy and they can like, basically like implement crazy ideas very quickly. But everything that also like Tammy said about, once you do implement something like that, then like measuring the impact of it has, if especially in an A/B test scenario, like do you have enough of an audience to find like a statistically significant result and such, like all of that like becomes very important. But in the bigger companies, when an idea like that, like a crazy idea comes, then it gets kind of squashed with, okay, do we have like enough of the audience and all these right questions, it gets squashed with all the right questions. But in a smaller company, I think teams would just be, okay, well, I guess we don't really know until we try, and then they go ahead and implement it. But yeah, I think with the smaller teams also, basically maybe their games don't really have the audience to kind of very formally showcase an impact of a new idea. But for those teams, the new ideas will be pretty like obvious also in terms of their impact, and you probably don't even need an A/B test for them. I mean, even this idea that Tim was talking about, the merge fables idea of showcasing what you get with grind versus pay now. I mean that I don't like, what is this this company is like they're also a small team, right? A startup or something, and I mean, they innovated with it and it seemed to work. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Something that I was contemplating this week is I believe being a product manager that's working on a smaller team forces you to take bigger bets on how much risk you need to take to see a big impact. Because if you're a big team with a lot of capacity, you can afford to do the investment of all of these small experiments and see the small uplifts that they can bring. But if you have very limited time to invest, you have to make bold decisions, bold risks to see that uplift.
yeah.
So in conclusion, medium-sized companies. So it's on them. There we go.
Well, I think for the way that I would always call it out is retention's hard. So first, make sure that your user base is there. Then go crazy with monetization. Like if you're at the point where you can be talking about like, hey, how do we maximize monetization? Man, you're already on the other side of success with your game.
Make sure the wallets actually exist to eventually open. So, but yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
At that point, you're already like pretty successful with your game. Like having a game that's sticky and like people engage long term. That's the hardest, I think, thing that we're always trying to figure out.
Yeah.
If you can be thinking about monetization, you can go crazy. Read up on all sorts of like crazy ideas that maybe haven't been tried. Like, because you can, back to your point, Tim, where have you seen this be successful, been tried or not? It's like big ideas. I think it also goes to like monetization and like even smaller things, like what we're talking about, like smaller optimizations. There's a lot of systems in monetization structures and ways that we can think about IPs that haven't been tried in games, but have been proven in other businesses.
Mm-hmm.
That's a safer way to like go crazy with games. Like I think the Garena Free Fire example reminded me, and it was not quite to like one crazy idea that I at some point I had discussed with a coworker, which was like more like, hey, what if we provide like the Froyo experience for in-app purchases? So you come in, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Froyo, but like you grab your cup and you serve yourself as much frozen
it's
yogurt as you want.
Make your own bundle kind of a thing.
I've seen some games do that.
Yeah.
And you like throw in like your sprinkles and like all your goodies, and then you just go and weigh it, and they tell you how freaking expensive the thing is. But it's like,
but you already done all
too
the
late
work.
to put it back.
but you're already excited about this thing that you've built with your own creativity.
I actually I pitched this feature as like one of when I just started working at Zynga for Farmville 1. I pitched this feature as like one thing that we could do. And I forget if we actually ended up implementing it or not, but it was exactly what you said, like just make your own bundle kind of a thing. And but yeah.
Well, we've learned that Tammy also really likes Froyo.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a scam. I always like it until I pay it, and I'm like, man, it's not worth it, and then I fall for it again.
Yeah, it's like it's pretty bad. No, like while you're actually making this, this awesome thing that you want to eat, like every second of making it, you're also like feeling bad at the same time. Like, oh, am I taking too much? Yeah.
Well, I'm curious now, based on other industries, we'll see if free-to-play games start using mail-in cashbacks. You have to send a little letter to get your cashback.
Oh yeah, it's a whole gambit. Yeah,
yes,
it's quite progressive. It's quite progressive because the people who really, really need that discount, they're motivated to do it, right? And then the people who don't really need the money, they're like, maybe I'll do it tomorrow, and then they don't do it. Yeah, okay, let's do that.
Speaking about family discounts, Xbox Friends and Family, how's that for a transition?
Nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah, just watch the YouTube video so you can see the disappointed faces right now.
The excited faces. What are you talking about?
Very
Just the mic is in front of my face. You can't see it.
Okay, quick summary. So Microsoft, they officially announced the Xbox Game Pass Friends and Family. earlier in September, which is only 7 days old. But they did a little leak, so rumors were about towards the end of August. The concept is that one user pays the membership, and then 4 other friends or family, but really people that live in the same country as you, so you don't have to be from the same household, just from the same country, they can then use the pass for that same price. Each person has their own account, their own profile, their own saves, their own achievements. So it's a completely separate experience. That's your player save data between all of these 5 different accounts in this membership. And you can even play the same game at the same time. You can all use multiplayer. It's really just 5 memberships within one. You also don't need neither a console nor a PC because the cloud gaming is included in this price. So Xbox Game Pass has 2 tiers. You can buy the Xbox Pass, you can buy the PC Pass for $9.99, and then there's a Ultimate Pass that encompasses PC, console, I think cloud as well, the multiplayer capabilities. And the Xbox Friends and Family is essentially an Ultimate Pass, so you gain access to all of that. Just to give you some idea on the pricing and how high value you get, the pass without the multiplayer is $9.99. The Ultimate Pass is $14.99. The Friends and Family Pass, so this is in euros because it's currently only being tested in the Republic of Ireland and Colombia, but in euros it is $21.99. So if you divide that through 5 people, that's less than 5 euros per person. Oh yeah, because the USD and euro is nearly 1-to-1 now. So less than 5 euros per person. You gain access to all of the games. I think this is the thing that's going to make me buy a console because it's great value. Okay.
What amuses me about it is how it looks in opposition to Netflix, right? Who are talking about going basically the other way and saying, wait a minute, look at all these guys sharing these passwords and we're losing people. That's not fair. So let's charge them separately. And then Microsoft coming the other way.
I have a very quick comparison.
Netflix also has like the family thing, right?
So they have the Netflix pricing and their plan. So Netflix, you pay for screens, how many screens you can watch at the same time. So their premium plan is for 4 screens, and that's €20.99, and then for 1 screen is $8.99. So 4 screens is the same cost nearly as the Friends and Family Xbox Game Pass. And Netflix has started exploring and implementing in certain countries that you have to pay additional to get someone using your account. I think, I don't know all the details. I think if you buy the premium, you get some households already included in it. But then if we look at PlayStation Plus, if we're looking at Ireland to compare the Republic of Ireland with itself, the extra, which has all of the game catalog of PS4 and 5, is $13.99 for 1 person. And so if you're looking at, I could use an Xbox Game Pass, which is less than €5 a month, or I could have the PS Plus. It's such a good strategy. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I mean,
what is it though? Does the money add up? You still got to wonder, right?
That is the take I had on this topic. Because what is Microsoft's strategy? They're making the Game Pass even cheaper, and we see the cost of production, the cost of running businesses increase. Instead of we see everyone, generalizing, we see the markets increasing their price. And here comes Xbox saying, actually, we'll make it more affordable for you to play if you get together and self-organize as a group.
Yeah. Well, so they did already have the mail-in coupon equivalent, right? There's been this sort of trick since about 2019, where you buy Xbox Gold month in advance, then you can do a special conversion to Ultimate, and you pay $1 for 1 month, and then you get all of your Gold time gets converted to Ultimate. And it's this whole cool trick you can do. And they have a blog post explaining how to do the trick.
Oh, wow.
But it's definitely mail-in coupon time, right? Because it's like a bit fiddly and it's a bit of a hassle, and actually you're committing to probably 3 years in advance. But the value of that, I saw some players discussing this, is kind of similar to this new family gambit. So maybe that's why they weren't as afraid. On the other hand, this is for sure going to be a more convenient way to do it than this shenanigans. So
Yeah, I mean,
it's got to
instead
open
of
it up to
instead
more
of like,
people.
your 4 or 5 family members having to purchase a full new console and a full new account and everything, I guess, I mean, this would be kind of the way to kind of expand that um transaction size per customer kind of a thing, right? For a
Mhm.
single family that would usually have one TV screen and one Xbox, and but they also have a computer screen, and and it's effectively like the same screen thing that Netflix is doing, I feel. And honestly, like, just speaking from personal experience, I don't have any data to back this up, but I pay for like the Netflix family, for 4 screens for me, my wife, my parents sitting in India, my wife's brothers sitting, in various parts of Germany. And honestly, like, my retention for that is 100%. Like, because if I
Right.
cancel it, then my mom would be like watching some documentary or a Spanish film. She started watching those these days. I don't know why, but she's watching Spanish films, and suddenly, like, goes off. So I mean, that doesn't make any
So
sense. But
I'm in the complete same boat as you. And one of my theories about why this is a great strategy for Microsoft is increasing the barrier of exit by having the social pressure of having to keep renewing your subscription. I
yeah.
downgraded my subscription of Netflix from the premium to the 2 screens. And on the same day, I had, my sister messaging me of, I can't watch Netflix. What have you done? And then I had to re-increase the tier.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, and I think
I'm
at
even like scared of
the
getting that message from the family. So I haven't even like downgraded or anything. So I don't even want that event to happen. But sorry,
yeah,
Tammy,
I
you
think
were
that
saying.
there's a couple of things that came up for me. One was the subscription, like the social part of it, right? Like we all share logins of all sorts, right? Like I have so many like streaming services. I only pay for half of them. The other ones are like shared logins with X, Y, Z person. And I think like it's great timing from Microsoft to be announcing this when, as you said, Maria, like there's like restrictions coming in, people are angry, like they're willing to go and look at the list of the subscriptions they have and start like purging.
Mm-hmm.
So with Microsoft getting ahead of it, it's like, oh no, wait, don't purge ours, purge the other guys, like all the other subscriptions that you have. I think like I found some interesting data actually around subscriptions, which was most people underestimate how much they spend on subscriptions by a lot. Like most people will estimate that they pay like $80 to $90 in subscriptions, when in reality the average is like way above to $120. So as soon as you start, doing an audit on your subscriptions, you're going to look at it hard, right? Because it's gonna surprise you. It's like, oh, I'm spending like way more than I thought on subscriptions. I think like that's a great way to get ahead of it. The other piece is when I think about Xbox Game Pass is like, who are they competing with? Like, what are, in terms of like business goal, other than just all the other subscriptions that you might have as a user. If we go down to like, where do you game as a user? For example, are they competing with Steam? Steam has a huge library, so they're trying to like, make it, Xbox also has a huge library, and they're trying to like bring in, people in and provide like a bunch of games potentially, and like compete against Steam. I think like that's because they're going against like console, PC, in like cloud gaming, right? So they're trying to just like offer as much as they can to be able to compete with all these other libraries of games that you might have. And when you start doing again like the math of like, well, on Steam I'm buying this game and this game and this game. On the Xbox Pass I get all of these for free, but it's just like this $5 for me in my group pass that now I have with my friends. Or my family, like that's, huge value. Like at that point, you start thinking about switching where you potentially play, where you potentially go first to play.
Or if you like, yeah, if you potentially like start the Netflix app and you open up your TV screen, or you like go and game a little bit. I think they're even like competing just for general attention with companies like
Definitely.
Netflix.
Yeah.
On the question about what you said, Maria, about like, well, production costs are increasing, but they are like further subsidizing everything by
Hmm.
doing family passes and such. I mean, of course, like, just from the business impact perspective, and I don't know, I feel it'll be a pretty positive impact. First is, I mean, just the average transaction per existing customer will probably increase with this. And two, customer retention will probably or subscriber retention will also probably increase with this. So there's definitely more stability. But on top of that, we also know like Xbox, uh, to get into the Game Pass, every game, or Microsoft itself is pretty flexible with the way that they get games in. So some games are getting like a revenue share from the subscription revenue, but some games just get like a one-time payment for just getting the game onto the platform. And I think there are like 2-3 other different methods. So they also have like diversity in how they want to compensate these different game developers, and that's dependent on how the game developer wants to get compensated. So, and that's why they kind of have the flexibility. So um so yeah, I feel like in this world where okay, production costs are increasing and such, um Microsoft still has like some defensibility against that, because they just have like more options, or just optionality for developers to kind of um keep their lights on, essentially. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a really good point about the announcement and releasing it now, staving off the possibility of people leaving due to prioritizing what subscriptions they have. Because no matter how appealing the content is within the Xbox Game Pass, is still nearly $15 a month that someone would be paying. And to show the pains, I looked at the Netflix data to show the pains of the economic downturn on people canceling their subscriptions. So in the first quarter, Netflix lost 200,000 subscribers. And in the second quarter, which is when we started seeing a snowball effect of everything that's happening in the world, nearly 1 million subscribers were removed. And still, this was below the worst case scenario. I believe Netflix were even expecting that they could have lost 2 million subscribers in the first half of the year. So that can have a massive impact.
Yeah, and that's the first time that they've
companies.
lost subscribers in 10 years, right? Like it's a massive like downturn in terms of like subscriptions, especially with like the subscription wars that we're living.
Yeah, and especially with Xbox exploring cloud gaming, exploring even being able to do streaming directly from your Samsung TVs, increasing the number of people that you can get within your net through these types of passes. They're also diversifying how people can engage with them. So you might be able to start attracting audiences that have never been interested in console, PC, mobile phones, and start bringing in new audience to play games through these different types of interactivity.
And then when the time is right, they'll increase the price a little bit for the entire family subscription. So that'll probably happen also.
And then you're
Exactly.
tied down to them, and you're like, well, it's a couple more bucks. Sure,
Yep.
we'll pay it.
Otherwise, I'm gonna get that call from my brother or from my cousin. So
Yeah, my Netflix subscription has now become my Christmas present to my family. And other
Nice.
stuff, of course. I'm not that terrible. Okay, we have to wrap up the episode. We had a lot of different discussions. I just want to do a shout out to Naavik Pro. We have some really interesting deconstructions with Rev Racing, which is a blockchain racing game, and Beastar deconstruction. So there's a code in the description if you want to become a Naavik Pro subscriber. And if you want to say something additional to these topics, you can find us in the Naavik's Discord. We're there. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. It was lovely to have you on. We'll see you
A shout out
in
to
another
using
week.
your bank app to put on notifications so that every time a subscription payment goes out, you see it on your phone. Do that. Game changer. There you go.
If you're doing shout out to my mom for watching Spanish films, since we're doing shout outs.
Tammy, do you got a shout out? Is it to Froyo?
I got a shout out to Froyo for always ripping me off.
Nice.
Bye, everyone.